Welcome to Vegas Showbiz. Today we ask you one simple question. Are you ready to rock? Join us for a review of Metallica and Greta Van Fleet in Las Vegas.
Hey, just a quick reminder, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We got a lot more good stuff coming soon. I wanted to mention that since I don't have Metallica's permission to use their music in my video, I just went ahead and used my own. The song that you hear on the intro and the outro is called River Slide. I wrote and recorded that myself at home. I got a link to it in the description. It's on my SoundCloud. There's a bunch of other music there that I did as well. So if you want to check it out, please do. All right. Hey, good morning. I'm coming at you the morning after Metallica. It's bright and sunny out here, so I figured I'd come back to the backyard and we could talk about the show. I do have to apologize, first of all, because I said last night that I was going to interview some friends that were seeing them for the first time, and unfortunately that part didn't work out. It was kind of chaotic getting out of there last night. A lot of people, it was really cold outside, everybody's trying to get to their cars. So the interview part didn't really work out as I expected. But I got a chance to talk to everybody about the show. It was a good time. As I mentioned in the intro part, this was my 6th time seeing Metallica. They're easily one of my favorite bands of all time. First time I saw them was the day of my 16th birthday. Got my license that morning. Drove to the Gorge. We were living in a suburb of Washington at the time, my mom and I. Got my license. I drove the two of us to the Gorge in George, which is like a 3-hour drive away. It was Lollapalooza '96. Saw some really cool bands. I remember Rancid played, Soundgarden, who's another one of my favorite bands, they played. That was my first time seeing them. Metallica closed the show. It was an awesome, memorable 16th birthday. Saw them several more times in the 90s. Took my nephew to see them in Seattle in 2008 or 9. I remember it was a December show. They hadn't been to Seattle in a long time. That was really fun. Haven't seen them since then until last night, so it's good to get back in the metal shows. You know, I've been to some other metal shows, but Metallica specifically. Took my wife. She's not like a metal fan, but she had been to one metal show with me in San Diego years ago. I took her to see Mastodon, but she had never seen Metallica. Strangely enough, I had been talking to her probably like a month or two before the show was announced, and I was saying, hey babe, if Metallica ever comes to Vegas, please promise me you'll go. I really want to take you to see Metallica. And then a month or two later, they announced the show, and it was like, well, I guess we already had that conversation. So we went with 4 other friends. Again, I'm the only one that had seen Metallica before that. Everybody had a great time. You know, I mean, for me personally, this was my first time going to a concert since before the pandemic, probably a while before the pandemic. I feel like it's been 2.5 or more years since I've been to a show. So just getting out there was great. It was also my first time going to see Allegiant Stadium, the new stadium for the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm gonna stand up here for a sec. And then also, first time seeing Greta Van Fleet. So I'm gonna talk about that because I listen to their music. I'm a fan of them as well. So overall, a lot of cool things to talk about. So let's get into it. First of all, the show started off with a band that was called Ice Nine Kills. I had never heard of them, and I didn't even know that they were gonna be on the bill until the day of the show. I gotta admit, it wasn't really my cup of tea. It was like theme metal, and the theme is horror movies. I don't really follow that genre so much. I don't have anything against it. It's just not something that I've seen a lot of. So I didn't really get a lot of the stage work that they were doing and the characters that they were bringing out. A buddy of mine in my group is into that stuff. He knows the stories. He got what they were doing, and he found it to be really interesting and entertaining. He was Googling the lyrics and knowing some of those stories. So, you know, if you're into that genre, you know, it might be worth checking out. I think musically, the same guy that liked it, he called it a mix of Slipknot and AFI. That was better than anything that I could come up with. So I was like, yeah, I can see that. That makes sense. It's interesting. You know, it's thematic. It's a stage show. You know, good for those guys. They're out there doing it. They're touring with Metallica. They're spreading their words. So I got nothing against them, and you know, wish them success. They played for about a half hour or so, and then a little bit later, Greta Van Fleet came out. I was excited to see Greta. I've been listening to Greta Van Fleet since their first album. I think I had the same reaction that most people had, which was like, wow, they sound a lot like Led Zeppelin. In certain cases on that first album, I felt like it was almost too blatant, like they were really ripping off Led Zeppelin. Their next album came out, I think it was last year, and I felt like it was an improvement just in the sense that it sounded more like them and less like blatant Zeppelin copy. Going to see them live, my impression was that, first of all, their sound was really good. We were in the back in the nosebleeds. You know, we were. It was a straight shot. I think we picked those seats just because it was like the group picked them because it was a good view. You're direct on. You weren't off to the side, but you're pretty far back. And you know, this stadium is very high from the ground. It actually featured indoor fireworks during the Metallica show, which I've never really seen before. Like setting off like 4th of July style fireworks indoors. That gives you an idea of how high it is. So for us being pretty high up, I felt like the sound wasn't so great for Ice Nine Kills, but it drastically improved for me when Greta came out. Their singer sounds amazing. I mean, he's got some pipes, man. That kid can wail. Their guitar player, in my opinion, I'm a guitar player, so I'm critical of that stuff. I pay attention to gear and everything. I liked him. I thought he was, you know, I love that SG that he's out there rocking. He just looks so much like Jimmy Page. It's weird. The Zeppelin similarities continue there. I mean, he's wearing an outfit that looks like Jimmy Page. He's got that SG like Jimmy Page. He's doing this kind of backwards rocking motion that reminded me of Jimmy Page, going backwards with the beat. There was so much about it that was Jimmy Page-esque. It was very noticeable to me, is all I can say. And then beyond that, I mean, my main impression was just like, it's one thing to sound like Zeppelin on a record, which is not easy to do to begin with. I mean, we're talking about like one of the greatest rock bands of all time, the band of the 70s, but they pulled it off live. I mean, a lot of times a band doesn't sound the same live as they did on a record. I've experienced that before. I did not feel like that was the case with Greta Van Fleet at all. I felt like they did sound like Zeppelin, but they pulled it off live and they were rocking. You know, more power to them, man. I mean, I don't know. I do feel, you know, I subscribe to that theory that great artists steal, and I'm not gonna, you know, knock them too much. They're not my favorite new band in the world, but rock music is not the hottest genre. I think we all know that right now. And, you know, young bands like them and maybe Rival Sons are kind of leading the charge for rock music these days, and they've certainly got my support. As an overall set, I felt like they were stronger in the first half and not quite as strong in the second half. I felt like they had stage presence during the music, during the songs. They were rocking, you were feeling it. But between the songs, there was very little. And to me, that was sort of an indication like, yeah, these guys are really young, you know. But maybe they were intimidated by the crowd. I really have no idea. But it was a pretty packed house. There was a lot of people there. They sounded good. I didn't know when their set was over. It was just like they played a pretty cool song, and then it was just kind of a quick thank you, and that was it. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, they're done. So that was surprising. I was kind of hoping for more of a proper ending, if you will. But overall, glad that I got to see Greta Van Fleet, and respect to what those guys are doing. I mean, they really do pull it off live. So that was that. Next up was Metallica, of course. You know, everybody was pretty excited about it. The sound was good for Metallica. I honestly, I felt like the sound was maybe a little bit better for Greta Van Fleet. To me, I could hear them a little bit better. My overall impression with Metallica was, you know, I've seen them so many times. I've seen them perform tighter as a band before, but it didn't really matter. The energy is still there. Their showmanship and the way that they just get the crowd involved was totally still there. You know, James did mention about 2/3 of the way through the show how, you know, it was great to be playing again and being out in front of people again. And, you know, that's probably, if they were mid-tour or end of tour, you know, they probably would have been a little bit tighter as a band. But overall, that's only because I have a lot to compare it to, and I listen to their stuff a lot. I watch them on YouTube. It was a fun show. I've got the whole set list, and I'll share that here with you in a minute. They mostly played old stuff. I was expecting them to do a little bit more of the Hardwired to Self-Destruct stuff, just because that was the last big tour that they did. But, you know, that album's several years old at this point. You know, I thought they were going to come out to Hardwired like they did on the whole last couple tours, but that wasn't the case. They actually started off with Whiplash. It was old school, and they were playing a bunch of old school stuff. In fact, I think Moth into Flame was the only song from the latest album that they did play. There was a few from the Black Album. The only Justice song they played was one. They played several cuts from Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning. A couple from, I guess just one from Master of Puppets, which was, no, they played two. They played Master of Puppets. That was the end before the encore. And they also did Battery. I was hoping for Sanitarium. I was hoping for Harvester of Sorrow. Those are probably the only two songs that I felt like I missed, but overall they played a lot of stuff. They covered a lot of ground. A lot of fire in the show. I was a little bit surprised by that. If you know the history of Metallica and James and all that, when he got burned up at that show back in the 90s, they never have been like a huge fire band since, but there was a lot of fire. I mean, during the song Fuel, it was going off, and there was a couple others as well. Oh, for One, when they did One, they recreated a war scene, and there was like a lot of fire and sound of gunfire and video clips playing showing images of war. It was a more theatrical intro to One than I have seen before. I mean, they usually just have like kind of the sound of the gunshots and then there they go. This was much more production for One, which was cool. Enjoyed that. I don't remember what else. James gave his inspirational talk to the audience, which was cool. I mean, that's kind of something he's known for doing, and I appreciate his perspective. I'm a big fan of that guy. I always have been. So that was good. It probably, in my opinion, it would have been cool to do a theater in the round, just because, you're pretty far back if you're sitting where we were, and therefore the sound kind of suffers. There's kind of a noticeable lag. If it was a theater in the round, which I say that just because Metallica has done a lot of that stuff in the past, you would be so much closer to the action rather than having it at one end of the field, kind of where one of the end zones for the football field would be. So that was one thought. There are some awesome seats there at Allegiant Stadium that are like recliner style seating. I think it was section 201 was so money because it was a dead on shot, like straight view of the stage, recliner seating, you're in the lower level. That looked really good. I mean, easy to say, I don't know what the cost per ticket was, but one of my tips, if I don't have any regrets, like that was an awesome experience. I went with friends. It's first show in a long time, very memorable. I wouldn't change a thing. For my next visit, if I'm going to a concert at Allegiant Stadium, I would probably think about making a couple changes. One is I would probably just fork out the extra cash to either have floor seats or be in a lower level seat. If I was gonna do the upper level seating again, I would probably try being off to the side rather than a direct view of the stage. You're gonna be a lot closer. I have a feeling that maybe the sound would be a little bit better. You sacrifice some of the visual for some of the sound. I would be willing to try that, but otherwise, if I'm a big enough fan of who's playing, and I would be for Metallica if they were coming back, I'd probably go for the better seating option if possible. The other thing that was a little bit difficult was parking. We were on, Spot Buddy or something like that, and we were able to purchase parking the night before the show, parking right on site. It was $50. It was right there at Allegiant, Lot F. Our friends were doing the same thing, and we figured, we'll just park where they are, and whatever, we'll all be in the same place. I found it very difficult to have to get to a specific place to park. I had not been to the stadium before, and a lot of streets are blocked off for the show. There's police out. So, Google's telling me take a left here, and I'm like, I can't, and it's to make a U-turn, and I'm like, I can't. It was stressful. The streets are blocked off. So you got to be careful. Ultimately, if you are parking on site, Dean Martin Drive or Dean Martin Way, it's the more major street that runs parallel to the freeway on the same side of the freeway as Allegiant Stadium. So it runs right along the freeway, and there are entrances to many of the lots. I can't say all the lots, I don't know, but the ones that we were looking for, it took several tries to figure out that we needed to go all the way to Dean Martin. Ultimately, somebody that was working the streets told us those directions, and it worked out. But the thing is by the time I finally got there, I had passed like 14 different places that I would have been willing to park at, some of which were cheaper than the $50 that I paid to park on site. I suppose you do get a little bit extra in terms of security from being on site, and I will say that getting out of there was easier than I expected it to be. I kind of thought that getting out was going to be a hassle, and we just cruised right out, and you're right there at the freeway, so getting out was no big deal. But if I was going back, like I have a friend that was a local here that went to the show, and he met up with a buddy that was staying at Flamingo. They parked there and took like the tram across, and then just walked over, tram to like, I don't know if it was Luxor or something like that. And then they just walked over. Pretty easy to do it that way. I also saw people that were parking at Luxor and just walking over the bridge. I know it was cheaper, a little bit more steps, to walk, but that's kind of a good thing. And I don't know, whatever. I again, no regrets, but parking on site, having to go to a very specific lot was stressful in the moment. It wouldn't be, again, the second time if I did it because I know where I'm going. Other than that, Allegiant Stadium was cool. I do feel like it looks cooler on the outside. Inside, it's a new, nice stadium. I didn't see it during the daytime. I didn't get to see the cool glass display and the light coming through. And so I'm not doing it justice, but I got there for an evening. It was clean, it was big, it was modern. A lot of ramps. It's very tall and a lot of stairs. You go way up there. For a football game, I could see how that would be cool. It is covered. I wasn't sure, is this a retractable roof or not? It's not. It's basically just a big tinted window. There's a big sound system up there. I'm kind of jealous of the Dallas Cowboys because they have that amazing screen in the middle, and that would totally fit here, but I guess it would impede a lot of the sunlight. I don't know, whatever, it is what it is. Nice place. I would love to go to a Raider game at some point. I'm sure I'll be back for a concert. But overall, it was a good first experience. It's great to see bands playing again. It's great to see crowds out having fun. I forgot what it was like. It's been too long since I've been to a show. And being that it was Metallica made it that much more special because I really am a huge fan. So that's it. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Did you go to the show? Are you a Metallica fan? Did you want to go? I'm curious to hear what people have to say about it, but hope you enjoyed the video and look forward to making the next one for you. All right, bye. I wanted to give you the set list, and here is the entire set list from the show. They started off with Whiplash. Second song was Ride the Lightning. Third was The Memory Remains. The crowd was really into Memory Remains, that da 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 da. Everybody was doing that for so long. The band even stopped playing and the crowd just chanted that for quite a while. It was really cool. Seek and Destroy. Fuel. As I mentioned, Fuel had a ton of fire during that song. That was pretty cool and memorable. Next was One, also very thematic. As I mentioned, the war scene, the fire, that was really cool. Sad But True, that was the first thing from the Black album that they played. Moth into Flame, that was the only thing from the latest album that they played. Wherever I May Roam, another classic from the Black album. For Whom the Bell Tolls, a lot more old school than Creeping Death, keeping it old school. Fade to Black, probably my favorite Metallica song, or certainly one of them. I think it was at this point that Kirk Hammett brought out his famous 1959 Greenie Les Paul. I geek out on guitars, I follow this stuff. I'm a fan of Gary Moore, who had the guitar before that, and Kirk bought from his estate. Before that even, it came from Greenie, from Fleetwood Mac, Peter Green. A lot of history in that instrument. Kirk brought it out, and he was playing it for several songs. I mean, we're talking about like a multi-million-dollar guitar here, and he totally played it out on stage. It was really cool to see that being played and hear that in person. Then they finished the set with Master of Puppets. Everybody knew that an encore was coming. So they came back out. They did 3 more songs for the encore. There was Battery, Nothing Else Matters, and then of course they finished it with Enter Sandman, which is how they finish pretty much every show, and everybody brings the house down with that one. So that was the whole set list. Hey, so before I go, I've got one small favor to ask. If you're liking our content so far, I promise you we got a lot more stuff coming. There's a lot of plans for this channel. Please help us out by liking the video and subscribing to our channel. We want to have you along for this ride. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this Vegas Showbiz production. Goodbye.